This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, how there, ho there, it's Jeff Carter. I welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And if you're a fan of ESPN's 30 for 30, like I usually am, you know that there's a lot of documentaries and a lot of great stories that they have talked about. A lot come to mind and all that, but I don't want to bore you with that detail. So basically, as you can tell by the thumbnail, what I'm going to talk about. The great ESPN 30 for 30 about O.J. Simpson, called June 17, 1994. So basically, to give you background, O.J. Simpson was in trouble with the law after his wife Nicole and her companion Ronald Goldman were both slain near O.J.'s house and all that. O.J. basically said that he didn't do anything about it and all that. So basically, these were the events of what happened on June 17th when O.J. was scheduled to be arraigned in LA in an LA courtroom for the murders of Goldman and Nicole Brown. But what happened on June 17th was huge because June 17th wasn't just an ordinary O.J. Simpson day. It was basically the day that a lot of things happened. A lot of events were placed on June 17th and all that. There were 5 key moments occurring on June 17th. At the 94 U.S. Open, Arnold Palmer was playing in his final competitive round at the U.S. Open. You know, Arnold Palmer was an icon for the U.S. Open. I know he died recently. He died September 2016. Oh, so he died like 5 years ago. Okay. So anyway, he was a major hero. Although he only won 1 U.S. Open, he won 4 Masters, 2 British Open, and 1 U.S. Open. The only one he missed was the PGA. So yeah, it was amazing. He won only 1 U.S. Open. He had how many runner-ups? He had 4 runner-up finishes in the U.S. Open. Basically, he couldn't get past the cut in anything. The last cut he made at a major was 1989 at the PGA. So anyway, he would play every Masters till 2004. He played in the 95 British Open, and then in the 94 PGA Championship. That was the last time he played PGA Championship. Unfortunately, Arnold Palmer would get cut all the times. So everyone was seeing the great Arnold Palmer. He had a decent first round, but the second round he just collapsed down the stretch and was outside the cut line. Second was the 94 World Cup. This was day 1 of the 94 World Cup, which was controversial in the sense that it was in the U.S. because the U.S. doesn't really have much of a soccer or football history, if you will. Well, association football. So a lot of people were like, basically, it was all about the money and all that. The U.S. basically said, we'll have a major soccer league after the World Cup and all that. It took them a little bit, till 96 to get Major League Soccer, but it's still in existence. So the 94 FIFA World Cup was big in its own right. I mean, I could do an entire video about the 94 World Cup. Basically, qualifying for the 94 World Cup had a lot of different major storylines. Almost every continent had a storyline about qualifying for the tournament in the first place. Africa had Zambia. You know, they lose any of their first team stars in a plane crash. They still continue with many replacements and all that. Plus a few Zambians who were actually in Europe at the time playing for their teams and didn't make the trip for qualifiers. So basically, yeah, a new Zambia team. And they were within a tie. If they had tied Morocco on the final day of qualification, they would have got in. South America had their own qualifying missteps in a sense, especially with Colombia crushing Argentina 5-0 and knocking Argentina down to an intercontinental playoff. All that. That was when Diego Maradona said he needed to get back into shape and help Argentina get to the World Cup because a World Cup without Argentina was terrible. So anyway, he did that. In Asia, Japan had a chance at a round robin tournament in Qatar at Doha, but they botched it. They basically said the shame of Doha. And since the shame of Doha, Japan has not missed the World Cup from '98 onwards. They have been to every World Cup. Oceania had its own thing. Australia was in the Oceania group at the time, not in Asia like they normally are. But Australia had won the Oceania group. Well, obviously, who was going to stop them? New Zealand? Not this time. So Australia had to face one of the runners-up in the CONCACAF group, which is North America. So North America had its matchups, and the United States qualified. The top team from qualifying from the last qualifying group in CONCACAF would move on alongside the Americans to the World Cup automatically, and then second place would have to face Australia. Mexico won that group. Well, obviously it's Mexico. So Canada, surprisingly, took second. And Canada would have to take Australia in a two-leg event. Unfortunately for Canada, they lost the penalty shootout at the end of it. But the good news for Canada was that they would have been crushed by Argentina, possibly, as Argentina had to deal with Australia in the Intercontinental Playoff, and Argentina got their spot. But for everyone's money, Europe had big qualifying goals. Denmark, the defending Euro champs, needed a tie against Spain to knock the Republic of Ireland out of qualifying and all that. And Spain screwed up. Their main goalie, Subisareta, was punished for a professional foul on Danish guy Michael Laudrup. And then the backup goalie, Canizares, shocked everyone by playing great, and Spain beat Denmark 1-0. Ireland beat Northern Ireland to get their spot into the group. So the defending Euro champs could not get to the World Cup. England had their own problems. They had some terrible games against Holland. They needed to pound San Marino and hope that Poland would beat Holland. Since when does Poland beat Holland in a competition? Meanwhile, England did beat San Marino 7-1. However, it must be said that they gave up a goal after 8 seconds after stupid Stuart Pearce back pass. But the biggest blow to qualifying was France back in 1994. France needed a point in their final 2 games against Israel and Bulgaria to qualify. Who knew? And they were both at home, so basically it was a no-brainer. But France choked in the final few seconds, giving Israel a win. Who knew? But France dusted themselves off. They knew that on the final day they just needed to beat Bulgaria or tie Bulgaria. Unfortunately, though, at 1-1, Eric Cantona and JP Papin basically screwed themselves up. No, sorry, Schindler screwed up. By not taking the ball to the corner flag and time wasting, he wanted to go in on a shot goal. Bulgaria counterattacked, scored a goal with about 10 seconds left in the match, and France were out of the World Cup. But France would have a happy ending, as in '98 they won the whole tournament. Well, they hosted it, so anyway. So yeah, the '94 FIFA World Cup was full of greatness. Unfortunately, though, it was full of errors in judgment, especially Andres Escobar after his own goal sunk Colombia in the tournament. 11 days later, he was gunned down. It was bound to happen in Colombia because, drug lords were losing money hand over fist because of Colombia's loss to the Americans. The U.S. somehow got through to the round 16, but Brazil beat them 1-0. Anyhow, the '94 World Cup would also be known for Roberto Baggio's giant miss and Brazil's title in '94. A lot of people blamed Baggio for being a Buddhist and all that. The Italian people were angry because, he was Buddhist, not Catholic. And basically, in one documentary, someone said, Italians went by the old standard. Blame that on which you do not understand. But Baggio kind of, in a sense, was a hero. Italy didn't do that badly in the '98 World Cup. So yeah, so that's what happened. Then came Ken Griffey Jr. and the home run chase. Griffey looked good, hitting home runs left, right, and center. And basically, the documentary showed him hitting home run against Kansas City with Chip Curry on the call. People forget Chip Curry actually did a season of Seattle Mariners broadcasts. Nice. But anyway, Griffey had a good year. But as he said before the '94 strike ruined things, I just had it back. good year. It was just a bad year to have a good year. Meanwhile, the New York Rangers were celebrating their victory in the '94 Stanley Cup Finals by having a ticker tape parade on Broadway. Obviously, June 14th was when the Rangers won the cup, and I did it. Sports Catastrophe on it. Should take a look at it. But basically, yeah, the parade was huge, lots of people and all that. And Mayor Giuliani basically said that go Knicks, because at the same time, the New York Knicks were in the NBA Finals against the Houston Rockets at Madison Square Garden, no less. It was Game 5. The Knicks and Rockets were at 2-2. The Knicks finally took care of Chicago in the playoffs and all that. And Houston was trying to eliminate their Choke City montage. But that was mostly because of the Houston Oilers. You know, you can kind of guess about the Houston Oilers and their mantra. But anyhow, Houston really wanted it. They had University of Houston star Hakeem Olajuwon on their team. Clyde Drexler was also, no, not Clyde Drexler, sorry. Like Ferdinand Maxwell, Sam Cassell, a good group of supporting players. Robert Horry was on that team too. So anyway, the Knicks Rockets Game 5 would be marred by the fact that throughout the day there would be updates about the O.J. Simpson situation. As O.J. was supposed to turn himself in, but he didn't, and then people were looking for him. And then there was a kind of a suicide note, quote unquote, from O.J., which was read by Robert Kardashian. Basically, my sister-in-law wasn't sure how about the Kardashians, how they were popular and all that. And then I basically told her, this was like 10 years ago. I told her that, well, it's because, he was good friends with O.J. Simpson. And rumors were that Kim was actually O.J.'s kid. And all that. But basically, yeah, Robert Kardashian. So, yeah, that's the first time we've heard the word Kardashian in the lexicon. It's weird how they had like $4 but no cents. Pathetic, don't you think? Anyway, so yeah, the OJ offense happened, and OJ was on the freeway with Al Collins, a former Buffalo Bills teammate, basically driving the car, and OJ having a gun to his head, and the police trying to tell OJ to throw the gun out the window. Everything will be all right. You'll be fine. And all that. So it was amazing and all that. The funny thing about the documentary was that there was no narration and no interviews, and basically music set to clips from news sources during the day. All that. And there were actually rare clips of sportscasters like Bergman and Costas talking to the producers about how to deal with the OJ story. So yeah, that was huge and all that. The O.J. Simpson charade basically took away from Game 5, took away from the Knicks' victory in Game 5, that they would have only needed to win one game in Houston to get the title back to New York and do the NBA NHL double. Sadly, though, Houston would win Game 6 and 7 on their turf and all that. So, yeah, there was a lot of aftermath. The U.S. Open had to end on Monday with a three-way playoff with Ernie Els winning. The World Cup concluded July 17th with Brazil winning. And the '94 World Cup was in a different ESPN 30 for 30 documentary about the two Escobars, about the own goal. The Rangers would not make a Stanley Cup Finals until 2014. The NBA Finals concluded with Houston winning in 7 games. '94 baseball season ended in strike, and OJ Made in America was one of the best documentaries ever. So, yeah. So, it was a fresh face. That's the only 30 for 30 I have actively on my computer that basically I love to death. And, it was fun to watch it and basically relive all those moments in '94, despite the fact I didn't know much about that stuff and I was 9 years old. So, shows how much I know. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.